What's going on, guys? Watomarmelon back again, and today I'm going to be bringing you a market watch for October 2nd. So, just a reminder, if you guys haven't already checked out the affiliate links in the description, thank you to everyone who's using those things. It does help out the channel. Also, I uploaded a top 10 cards of the last 5 years on my main channel, and I think you guys are going to want to check that one out, so make sure to check out that channel as well. So, without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to start off with some of the 10 quarter century secret rares, one of the more recent releases, and I think some of the more interesting cards out right now. So we're going to start off with Blue Eyes, which is atop the set, and last time I covered it, and it was closing in on $20. Right now it has shot up, as you guys can see right here. I'll zoom in on the 1 month trajectory. This is for lightly played, so if we look at near mint, oh, this one does not want to cooperate. There we go. You can see that it shot down to close to 20, and then it's gone up and been around $30 or so. And that's what I said. I thought it was undervalued at 20 on release. Who knows where it'll end up long term, but I think people want an SDK art Blue Eyes, and something that is this shiny for $30 still seems like a reasonable price. Dark Magician Girl has actually fallen out, but if you look at the bar graph, this tells you a bit different of a story. Again, I need to filter to just near mint. I don't like that the default is not near mint. You can see that the sales rate is actually doing it's still doing quite nicely. And so even though it's a $16 card, again, I think that this is, if you told me you could get this shiny of a Dark Magician Girl for $16 before the Megatins, I would call you crazy, but here we are. And I think people are going to want this despite how much supply there will be on the market. So I like this one as well. Next up, we have the Prismatic Secret Rare, which this art of DMG is, I think, pretty nice. I think it's one of the better ones. And so I do think there is legitimate demand for such a version. However, I think at $30, despite the fact that the Prismatic Secrets had a huge pool to draw from, I don't think that this is too reasonable. I'm a bit surprised by this, and I imagine once this alt art gets another printing, assuming it does, that this one will fall out quite significantly. But given how nice it looks and that the art is actually pretty good, I don't hate it for sure. Next up, we have Raigeki alternate art, another alt art. I didn't cover any of these last time, so I wanted to go over these right now. You can see that this is about 13 and a half, and that it's gone up quite considerably in price. I don't like this alt art. I think that at $13.50, it's pretty crazy, and so I think that this is one that I would avoid personally. One of the alt arts that I do really, really love is this Red Eyes Black, and I think that, at $7, it's a pretty nice steal, and so I'm personally a big fan of this one, and we'll see where this one ends up. This is my dark horse among the Prismatic Secrets. I think that at $7, Red Eyes Black Dragon is enough of a draw that people are going to go after this thing, and given how hard it is to pull a specific Prismatic Secret, I think it's going to do well. Even though the rest of the set is pretty loaded for collectors, I still think that there is going to be some room for this thing to do well. Another alt art that I'm not a huge fan of is Harpy's Feather Duster. It's a bit surprising because I've only really heard positive things about most of the alt arts that are present in the Megatins. But I don't know, I'm just not a huge fan of them, and I think that at $8.30, I still think this is pretty overvalued. This is just me speaking based on my interpretation and my view of the artwork. I just don't think it's that nice. So again, it's going to depend on when reprints of this artwork come out, but I'm not a huge fan of it. So that's all I'm going to talk about the Megatins, because I've talked about it last time, and I'm sure a million other people are talking about them. So I wanted to talk a bit about some things that you probably aren't seeing too often on market watches. And to start off, we're going to talk about Dark Armed Dragon Ultimate Rare. This one has seen a bit of a buyout. So again, I'm going to sort. I should have done this ahead of time, but I'll sort by near mint. You can see that there have been a number of sales. When you see only a couple over the past couple of months, that might seem like not much, but given how rare this card is and how expensive it is, that's actually a huge number of sales in a short time period. So you can see that it's been bought out. The market price, went from 360 to 320 where it is right now. But when you look at the lowest listings, it's 650 from a verified seller. And so in a couple of these here's a Spanish, here's a MNT graded copy, PSA 9. Basically, there's only graded cards left and a couple of these verified sellers left selling Dark Arm Dragon. And so I'm not sure what the motivation was for buying this thing out. I mean, there have been a ton of recent printings that are pretty nice. You have the Quarter Century Secret, there's the Ghost Rare out of Ghost from the Past 2. There's a lot to really go after, and so it is a bit surprising to see that people buy this out. But I think people are really revisiting Edison format, and I get the logic that if Caius is that expensive, why isn't Dark Arm Dragon that expensive? I think that's the logic that you have to go about, because Caius is one that I also thought was a crazy buyout, and it's stuck and even gone well beyond the price that I thought was reasonable. And so, I'm approaching this Dark Arm Dragon buyout with a bit of the same view. I guess, perspective is probably a better word. Basically, I don't think that this is reasonable, but I've seen what has happened to Caius, and I think that Dad is pretty comparable to Caius. I'm not an Edison player, so I don't know, but it seems to be pretty comparable. And so I don't know where this lands in the final landscape. And, my initial knee-jerk reaction is that this is crazy, but who knows? Edison players probably know a lot better than I do. This is one that, when you look, you get rid of these Korean copies, the lowest listing from a verified seller English is 190. And you can see that the market price, again, lightly played. I think this should just default to near mint personally, but you can see that the market price on this thing was like $90. And so this is now 190, and then it goes up pretty quickly. So there's been a lot of movement on some of these collectible cards that I was personally not expecting at all. Additionally, I think Stratos is a prime candidate for a Quarter Century Secret in the Quarter Century Bonanza. I think this would be a card I would put my money gets a Quarter Century Secret. And so I don't know. I'm a bit surprised that it has doubled market price, and I hope no one's buying this at 190 because I don't think it will stick, but it's something to note. Moving from that alt art that I said I didn't love to a version that I think is pretty underrated. It's the, again, we will filter. I really should have done this ahead of time, but this is a version that I like a lot, and that's the Ultimate Rare. You can see that sales have been very consistent for this card despite the declining market price, and you can see you can get copies for $20, no problem. And so I don't see why this would be, only double or a little more than double that alt art Prismatic Secret. Like, I really like this version, and so it's a bit surprising to me to see so many copies lined up at a pretty reasonable price point. So I think this is a pretty nice steal. Next up, we have Enemy Controller. I mean, we can look at the yearly plot on this. I mean, this was quite expensive for some time. It even had like a rebound where there's a bit of a bull run here. But yeah, I mean, it rebounded up went down to 32, and then it bounced back up to 50. Now you can see that you can get copies for 13, 14. That's pretty insane. And actually at these prices, that seems like a buy to me. I'll probably pick one of these up, although I'll see if I can get it off TCG Player to basically avoid the fees and such. But this seems like a pretty nice card, and personally I'm a big fan of these Ultimate Rares. It's pretty crazy how OTS Ultimate Rares have been really underperforming expectations in recent memory. I mean, these used to be like easy $50 cards, and now, they're dropping well below 15 pretty frequently. Here's another OTS Ultimate that I think is, spoiler, but this is on my list of the top 10 cards from the last 5 years for collectors. And I just think that this thing gives you a lot of bang for your buck. And I think that at 40 something dollars, you can see near mints are selling for 43. This is a beautiful card. If you haven't seen the texture, it's incredible. 45 is the lowest listed, but there are tons of people lined up at 45, and I just think that this card's insane. It's a very, very beautiful copy, and so I'm a bit surprised to see things like Stratos get bought out, and then you see Cyber Dragon alternate art, and it's infinite copies lined up at 45. So I don't know. I'm not exactly understanding. Next up, we have Cyber Dragon Quarter Century Secret. This is one that I personally like a lot, and I also think there's a ton of supply on this thing, but you can see that the graph is trending upwards for sure. And I think there are going to be a bunch of Cyber Dragon cards printed in Quarter Century Bonanza. I think for sure Cyber End Dragon is going to be printed if it hasn't already been announced. And if you look in the OCG, Cyber Twin got their prismatic, or I think their Quarter Century Secret. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see a bunch of Cyber Dragon cards printed in Quarter Century Secret, which means that everyone has to go back and pick up the original Cyber Dragon, which is obviously going to be the most demanded. You take a look at the Exodia pieces out of the tins and how that really drove the interest in the head so that people could complete the set. I don't think it will push this up to the same extent, but you can see that people are already interested in this card. I mean, Cyber Dragon is a fan favorite, a playable card in those Cyber Dragon decks, and despite how many copies of this thing there are, I think that the demand is huge for such a card, and so I wouldn't be surprised to see this trend continue. Next up, we have 10,000 Dragon. This is not one that's really had any real movement in the past couple of months, but lowest listing is $825, market price is $835. It's just interesting because this is I view this as a pretty iconic card from the modern era of collecting, albeit maybe a bit overpriced. But it really hasn't stuck with a lot of people despite how much hype it originally received. And you can see that there are 28 listings, which is a lot. And so I'm interested to see what this thing does long term, because it seems like something that really got caught up in a fad and then just it slowly has eroded over time. And when I look at something like Dragon Master Magia, I've said it before, I think it's going to follow a similar trajectory where it skyrockets to the moon, and then over time people sort of lose interest in it, and it just more and more appear on the market, and eventually it just sort of eats, it regresses to where it probably should have been to begin with. And so I predict a similar trajectory for Dragon Master Magia, but this one to me is a bit, I like it better than Magia, and so it's interesting to see that really no one's buying this thing. Next up, we have the Light of Destruction reprints. You can see $80 for an Honest. I mean, who's buying that? Judgment Dragon, I don't know who's buying this sort of stuff. I understand that this was meant to be sort of an EU exclusive, with the exception of some, there's some retail box that appears in the US as well, but I don't know. This to me seems like a bit of a failure, even if you look at this, some of the cards are pretty expensive. I just don't know who's buying this stuff, and I think as cool of a set Light of Destruction is, I just think that it's too niche for people to actually want to buy it. I think it's sort of out of the era of a lot of the primary... It's not vintage enough that most big collectors are going to be ripping this set out of nostalgia. It's more that people who played at this time, I think, are really interested in sets of Light of Destruction and Phantom Darkness. But those people are just going to buy singles and probably don't care too much about, ripping packs. And so I just don't... This, to me, was a very head-scratching reprint. I don't really care a whole lot. I don't think it's terrible, but, it's a little bizarre, to be honest. And it's interesting to see how some of this stuff has fallen out. A reprint set that I think people were much more excited about is Retro Pack, which was released as a North American exclusive. And you can see how crazy the retail exclusive boxes and the sort of mini boxes have gone, but most of the individual cards have fallen out quite considerably, and I think it's fun to open, but people aren't really putting this in their binder and expecting this to sort of be there in a year or 2 years' time. I think a lot of people want to crack it for the nostalgia and then want to just dump the cards. And so you can see that, some of the ultra rares are $4. The Blue Eyes ultra rare is $11. I mean, there isn't a whole lot of value to be had in this set, albeit some of the secret rares are doing quite well for themselves. But I think this is a set that people really just want to open. They don't actually want to collect. And building a binder set of this is actually very easy given how crazy the pull rates were on this box. And so I don't know, I originally said I hated this reprint, and then I said, actually it's pretty cool, and it's cool to see how excited people got about ripping. And now I've sort of not regressed back to my original take. I still think it was a pretty decent reprint. I'm a bit surprised at how many people were excited to open it up, but I don't think that this is, as special as I think a lot of people thought when it first released. I think people got their fix and have sort of moved on. I think it will do all right long term because people weren't expecting it to go this crazy, but I still am a bit surprised how well it actually did. So that's all I have to say. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you do, make sure to subscribe, all that sort of stuff. It's been your boy Watomarmelon, and peace out.